We are halfway through the first month of 2026, and if my experience is anything to go by, this is normally the time of year when people start to realize maybe they bit off a bit more than they could chew for their 2026 New Year's resolutions, or maybe those resolutions aren't even the goals that they want to pursue. And if you find yourself in that boat, then you are in the right place, because today's video, we're going to be going through how to create systems that actually get you to the goals that you want to achieve. We're going to be walking through my personal as well 2026 goals, systems, and how I actually operationalize them in my everyday life. So let's just hop right in. Hi, if you're new here, my name's Zoe, I'm 25, I live just outside of New York City, and I'm just trying to figure out my life in my 20s. So if that's something that you are also trying to do, then make sure to like and subscribe and stick around for more. Back when I was in school, whenever I'd get an assignment, I would always figure out exactly which days of the week I was going to be working on that assignment. And if it wasn't the day for me to work on that assignment, then I wasn't going to let my mind get stressed or burdened with the idea of thinking about that assignment. Obviously, sometimes things had to adjust and shift based off of my life and how long I expected things to take. But for the most part, this system really worked for me. I'm somebody who really needs to set aside time to really focus on one thing. I'm not a big multitasker, but this is the year that I want to expand this system that I used in school for my bigger goals that I have for the whole year. And I think that there are two things that are really important when using this method. Number one is an understanding of how long each assignment or each goal is going to take you, as well as an understanding of how much time you actually have to achieve that. For example, if I had 6 big assignments due in 1 week, I wasn't going to say I'm going to do them all Thursday night, the day before they're due, right? I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to do this part, this easy part of this assignment, and maybe a harder part of this assignment, or I'm going to do all of this one assignment in this night. You need to have that understanding whenever you're setting your goals for yourself as well. The second part that I think is really important with this kind of methodology is also having a reliance on yourself. Like, you can't be flaking out if you make a plan and you say, this is the day that I'm going to do this thing. I feel like I work a 9 to 5. I am tired when I get home at the end of the day. And something that I've really struggled with over the last few years is telling myself I'm going to do something and then actually doing it when it comes to the stuff that I do after work, things like YouTube or exercising or whatever it may be. And I'm starting to really learn my limits when it comes to those things and how much time I'm willing to put in to certain things as well. And I think that this is something that I'm really trying to take into the goals that I'm setting in 2026. It's all of this data of when I failed and being able to use that to make sure that I succeed this year. So let's talk about my goals. I sat down and I thought about what was really going to be the most important to me in 2026. So the 3 areas that I said I wanted to focus on this year were my financial well-being, wellness/fitness, and then my social media pursuits. I think those are like the 3 biggest categories that I could possibly make for what I'm going to be focusing on this year. So then I went through each of these pretty big buckets and I laid out assignments for each that I want to do throughout the year. Each of those assignments I then put into a specific quarter of the year that I'm going to be focusing on. So for example, one of the biggest things that I want to work on this year is my flexibility. Now, I also know that I only have so much time that I can put into stretching or dancing, on top of also just trying to be a healthy human being and doing workouts on a regular basis, and et cetera, et cetera. So I picked out a couple of different areas within flexibility that I really want to focus on. The first is splits and over splits. I can do the splits, but I want to bring back my over splits just to help extensions for ballet. And then I also really want to work on my back flexibility as well. But along with that, I also know that I have some other fitness goals that are probably going to be pretty time consuming that I want to do in the second quarter and the third quarter of the year. So with that in mind, I have said that in Q1, I want to focus on my splits. But what I also want to do in Q1 is to figure out a routine that will help me just kind of maintain my flexibility while I am also going and doing these bigger fitness goals. So I'm creating a system of this stretching that I could do after I do a workout later in the year for when I want to run a marathon or I want to do a triathlon, that I can still keep that flexibility going. And then once those 2 things are However, I'll go back to focusing on it a little bit more when I'll move on to focusing on like back flexibility. The idea here is that I am going to create this very simple system while also like emphasizing certain parts of my goals at certain times based off of what I actually know I have the time and the energy to do. So I'm going to do a lot of the heavy lifting for flexibility in January so that I can just go on autopilot for the rest of the year, more or less. So just to talk about some of my other goals, just because it's fun. So in my wellness category, I want to attend ballet classes 1 to 2 times a week. I'm saying 1 to 2 times because in the time of year where I am not doing marathon training or triathlon training, then I definitely want to try to go like 2 times a week. But I am also saying, okay, at those times where I'm focusing on those other things, I'll pull it back a little bit in the ballet realm. So yeah, on top of that, I want to be doing another triathlon this year, probably a smaller one than last year. I did my first 70.3 last year, which was so cool, but oh my gosh, was it exhausting. So this year, I think we're going to go a little bit lower. We might do some sprint triathlons, maybe an Olympic triathlon again, but something a little bit more chill. My big fitness goal for this year is I think I'm going to try to do a marathon, which is kind of crazy to say. And I like haven't like 100% committed to that, but maybe this is it. This is me committing to doing a marathon in 2026. For more like mindness, wellness goals, I want to read 25 books this year. My goal for 2025 was 20 books, and I actually read 27, but that's also because I reread the Harry Potter series, which I feel like kind of doesn't count. I don't know. I have mixed feelings towards whether that counts or not, but I know this coming year I want to do 25 based off of that. Audiobooks are such a hack for that, by the way, if you have a commute like I do. Audiobooks all the way. I also want to try to journal 3 times a week, and I'm gonna wait and start that in Q2 just because I feel like there's a lot that I'm already setting up for Q1 that is gonna take a lot of time. So I'm gonna try to start with journaling 1 time a week in Q1 and then kind of building up as the year goes on. My next big category is financial well-being, and for me a lot of these goals kind of center around the fact that I feel like I am going into like my 3rd year, disgusting, post-grad. In fact, 4th year post-grad, oh my gosh. I graduated like 3 years ago, basically, is what I'm trying to say. And I think it's time to start taking a step up on some of my financial goals. So I had set everything up whenever I first graduated. I got the Roth IRA set up. I have a 401k set up. I kind of did the basic things that you need, an HSA, all of that kind of stuff. And I feel like it's time to start stepping it up a little bit. I have a pretty good solid base when it comes to my finances right now. And I feel like that just means that I am bringing in more money than I need to on a regular basis in terms of cash, and I think it's time that I try to up the amount that I'm allocating to those retirement funds, as well as potentially playing around a little bit more with just my own stock investments and just not necessarily like day trading or anything wild like that, but you know, just doing something a little bit more than kind of what I consider to be like a baseline. You should have this going. And so I really want to try to make sure I'm maxing out different accounts this year. And then in addition to that, I've also lived with my boyfriend for 2 years, and we haven't really mixed our finances very much up until this point, but we're kind of getting to the point now where we want to try to open some accounts together. It'll just make things a lot easier in terms of our day-to-day life. I want to get that all sorted, and then I also just want to update all of my tracking to reflect that. And then my final goal is social media presence. Now, my issue when it comes to social media is that I am so good at planning everything. Like, I've had so many videos planned for the last several years, and I struggle with action when it comes to this. And I do think that you really do need to find a good balance of both. But this year, the name of the game is action. So that to me means I'm going to film and edit more videos than I ever have before. And rather than just not ever doing it because for some reason I just don't think the idea will work or it's really hard for me to get clips, we're gonna do it and we're just gonna see how it goes. And so that is the resolution that I have for the year when it comes to social media. But I do have a couple other little things. I really wanna try to upload 3 times a month to YouTube. And then starting a little bit later in the year, I want to relaunch my podcast. And I have so many ideas for that. In case you didn't know, I have a Formula One podcast that I started last year, and it was so much fun, but it got to be a little bit overwhelming at points. And so I just want to rethink the way that I'm putting that in and together just to kind of go back to that idea, like I only have so much time. I need to figure out how to allocate my time to things I actually want to do and how to best do that. Then my other goal with that is I want to upload more like short form content. Like I've really been loving TikTok recently. I have so much fun doing that. But I think that something I want to try to do is kind of incorporate more cohesion between like what I'm posting on YouTube and what I'm posting on TikTok, and just kind of bring it all together. So let's talk about the actual systems and habits and tracking and tools that I'm going to be using throughout the year to make sure that I actually achieve my goals. A quarterly goal is still pretty lofty in my opinion, but sometimes I can get so much in the tracking and like the planning, like I said, that it can be really hard. Now I do think it is very important for me that I need to be planning things out. However, I'm going to change how I typically plan. So normally every Sunday I would sit down and I would plan the whole entirety of the next week. I think that I need to start actually planning on like a 2-week basis rather than just a 1-week basis, because if, for example, for me, I think this would make a lot more sense because one of my goals is really to focus more on content. And so by focusing on only 1 week, then I get to the weekend and it's like I haven't planned the following week, so I don't really know what type of content I need to be making at the weekend when I have the time before the actual week starts. So for me, I think that the solution to that is, okay, I need to be planning 2 weeks in advance, but also I need to really sit down and do some like deep planning and dedicate time, 1 hour a week to planning, so that I am not stuck like planning here and there everywhere to the point where I don't actually do anything. Because I think the real thing here is I get decision paralysis, and if I already have a plan, I am so much more likely to do it. Now, the other thing that I'm going to be doing is I'm going to only be tracking 3 habits throughout the year, and those 3 habits are going to correspond to those 3 big bucket categories that I said. So I am going to basically say I want to have a movement category, so that kind of falls under my wellness category. I am going to also have like a grounded category, so that's going to be more like journaling, but if I do anything for finances, I'm also going to put it into that category. And then the third one is just social media action. So that to me means filming, editing, or like deep research that is like what I plan to do that day, because I do think that I do need some research for like the podcast and XYZ. And essentially, I just want to know that I am focusing in on these buckets on a regular basis. So anyway, to go back to planning, because in order to make sure that I'm doing these 3 things every day and I'm not just like twiddling my thumbs and being like, okay, well now I can do this, but I don't actually have anything planned for this, I'm going to show you what I actually use to plan. So this is my planner. I've actually been using this already for 6 months. This is from The Daily. This is a hefty planner. Like, this thing is heavy. The layout for me personally is like just perfect. So every month it has a monthly overview page, but then it also has like a monthly budget, which I actually don't use the budget page that much because I do that all online. If you're interested, I have some other videos talking about that, but I also hopefully will do an updated version this year. It has a place to do a monthly reflection, which is definitely what I'm going to be doing this year. Instead of doing like a major reset every month, I kind of just want to do this reflection page just to make sure I'm in alignment with all of my goals. And then I'm going to do my major resets at that quarterly mark, because that's going to be when my goals kind of shift and change. The weekly layout is so useful. On the left side, there's like a weekly overview where you can write down all of your meals for the week, which is so nice for meal planning. Then there's actually a grocery list, but what I actually do is I cross out the grocery list and I turn this into like a content planner. So I put down exactly what I'm planning on uploading each day on TikTok or working on for YouTube, all of that kind of stuff. And then the other side is just like a quick area where you can write down just a few like of your big things that are happening every day. There's a habit tracker at the bottom, which is where I'm going to be putting those 3 habits that I was saying that I wanted to track. A to-do list on the side, which is good just for a brain dump of what needs to get done that week. And there's also a place to plan out your workouts. So this just has it all. And then on top of that, you have daily pages, which has a full hourly schedule every single day and a massive to-do list. So I actually use this for my like 9 to 5 work as well as my personal work, and I love that because it just means that I can have it all in one place. Everything is right here in my hand, and that just like it just works for my brain. I need everything in one place. I also will usually, just for how I usually handle this, I'll write like a little quote at the top every single day, and then I will use a note section down here to write down 3 things that I'm grateful for. Then along with that, I also did do this 2026 reset page on Notion. So I did a whole bunch of reflections at the beginning, but all of my goals are tracked down here. I'm just putting in the 3 categories that I want to focus on, and then we have our breakdown down at the bottom where I can just check it off, check in, make sure that I'm following things as I wanted, do any changes that may come up, because let's be real, by the time that March comes around, I'm probably gonna have some new ideas in mind. Now, I cannot emphasize enough that the new year is a great time to start new goals, but it's also like so tainted in the sense that, like, okay, as soon as you feel like you're not hitting those goals, it is so easy to fall off of them. But I sometimes feel like the goals that I just start on like a random Thursday, I am so much more likely to keep than those ones that I start at the new year, just because they feel so much more like private. They're for you. They are what you actually want to do, because you know that when you want to do something, why start any sooner than tomorrow, you know? So don't feel like because maybe you missed a few days of doing some kind of goal that suddenly you'll have to wait until next year to do it. That is not the case. You have got this. This is going to be the year for you. Every single time that you start trying to take a step in the right direction, even if you fail, is just data. Like, that's just knowledge to be like, okay, whatever I did this time didn't work. So next time that I try doing this again, maybe we tone it back a little bit. We start smaller. Instead of saying we're going to go to the gym every single day, we say, okay, for the next 2 weeks, I'm going to go to the gym 1 day a week. Then after that, we're going to go 2 days a week. And you build it up and you figure out what works for you in your life. You don't have to drastically change the entire life, but just a little bit more intention on your day-to-day activities is going to transform your life so much more than saying, I'm going to do this and then falling off of it after 2 weeks. If you have watched this far into the video, then I would imagine you've already got a whole bunch of goals on your mind. But if you don't, I am going to be doing a short form like TikTok series, just going through a whole bunch of different things I think that you should do towards the beginning of 2026 in order to maximize the rest of your year. So if you are interested in some ideas, make sure to go check that out. I really appreciate you guys watching this video. If you liked it, then make sure to like and subscribe and leave a comment below about any New Year's resolutions that you're set this year. And I can't wait to see you guys in the next video. Bye!